hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every young couple in love, every mother and father, inventor and explorer, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. Distant image of our tiny world. It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the only home.
All right, welcome everybody. Hello, welcome to the stream. So today we're going to be looking at Abberwall. So go ahead, trickle on in, find yourself a seat. If you have popcorn, now's the time to pop it. 3:30. I guess it's not yet dinner time for a lot of people, but welcome anyway to the stream. So we're going to be changing a few things. I don't like the intro so much. I'm not really into League as much anymore. I don't like that game. It's so frustrating So I'm going to change the outlook of everything. So the next time you see the stream, a lot of things are going to change. So anyway, get ready for that. So today what I have planned is the reveal of Abberwall. So Abberwall is a Victorian fantasy novel. Top says, hello lovely. Hi mom, welcome to the stream. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my book. So I had to figure out where to start when it comes to Abberwall. I guess let's start with the history of Abberwall. So Abberwall, and let me pull up a frame of it just so that you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Abberwall, like I said, is a Victorian fantasy. All right, there it is. Abberwall is a Victorian fantasy, and it first came to me when I was playing Bloodborne. I'm a big fan of Bloodborne games and the Order 1886 games, so kind of those games are what brought me into... Let me lower the music a little bit here in my headset. Okay. So those are kind of what inspired me. It's very in that Victorian era, but I have a dark twist to it. So it's set in its own world. And the protagonist is Madeline, which is here on the cover art. So you might ask yourself, looking at this cover art, it's very gothic. You know, it's got two pistols on both sides. One looks like cursed, like altered, definitely, and the other looks a little bit more normal. I wanted to do with the cover art a little bit of contrast. So on the, I guess it'd be on the right side, on your right side, right over here on this side, here it's all the cursed images, right? So that would be this demon up here, this gun, this beast is a chimera. I'll get into that a little bit later, and then half the so half the serpents on this side, right? So it's very thematic. And then on the other side, Daddy says hi. Hi, Dad. Welcome to the show. Like I said, we're talking a little bit about Abberwall, and this is a cover art to the novel. It's just a working cover art. It may not be what ends up on the book, just because if a publisher picks it up and says they don't like this, I'm going to have to work with them to get something that they like, something that we both would like. So the idea is that they see this and go, yes, this is fine, print it. But I doubt that that's what's going to happen. Publishers have a little bit of say when it comes to marketing and cover art. So I doubt this is going to be the thing that ends up on the book. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the themes here. There's a duality here. On the right side of this cover art, it's like I said, it's a demon. There's a gun that's kind of like altered. It looks cursed. And then there's the beast, and half of the mask is in the middle, right? On the other side is the angel. You see an angel on the left side, and a gun that's like not cursed, and then a picture of a human, right? And then again in the middle is a serpent, and if you notice, the serpent's head is on the good side. So, and then obviously since the mask is in the middle, I'm implying that duality is in combination of this character. So that's kind of what I wanted. I told my artist, by the way, a big shout out to Emilio C. Rodriguez. He's been doing my cover arts for almost 4 years now. He did my first one, Knights Without Kings, and the second, The Twin Princes, which you can check these out. I really should have these. I really should have this up. But Emilio did these cover arts, and I'm going to just link it in the chat here. So if that's something that you're interested in, this is the link to check out those books and take a look. Also, his Instagram is full of art that he's done, and it's all really, really good stuff. I honestly hope to continue working with him throughout my career. I may not be able to, but I hope that I am. Oh, by the way, since my parents are on, they bought me this shirt. So I'm just gonna put it up here. It says, "I paused my game to be here." I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, before we continue, I just wanted to say that my parents got me this since they're in chat. I just wanted to share it. So, okay. So this is the cover art to the novel. It's a working cover art. It may not be what ends up in the final product once I start querying for an agent, which is the next step. Right now, my novel is in beta. So it's being edited right now. Once it comes back, which should be in at least another month and a half, then I'll start querying, which I will also be streaming the querying process and showing people from the inside what it's like to query for a novel. So one special thing that I wanted to do today And we can turn this down just a little bit more. One special thing I wanted to do today was show you the first 10 pages of this novel. And instead of just showing to you and reading to them on stream, I read them in a video and added music and special effects. And the first video came out yesterday. So that's like the first 10 minutes. This whole thing is about 22, 23 minutes long. And I didn't want to put that all in one chunk video before the first and second part came out. So my plan is we're going to watch the whole thing here. Then we're going to talk a little bit about it. And then next week comes out part 2. And then the week after that is going to be the entire video. So the video that you're going to watch right now will come out on the channel 2 weeks from today. But I wanted to give you guys the first look in a way of saying thank you for being here. In a way of saying thank you for checking this channel out, for being a supporter. Again, if you like this channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. That'll let me know that you guys like this kind of thing, and I'll do more videos like this with other projects that I have in the future. Good looking shirt. Yeah, thanks. I really like this shirt. It's really large and comfy, so I wear it quite a bit. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the actual video that I made. And it is the first 10 pages. I need to pause this because I think it starts right into it.
Smog lay heavy in the air like a
wave. Okay. So this is the video that I made that will be coming out in a couple weeks. So we're going to watch the whole thing. I'm going to put this like right here. Try not to get in the way of too much. Okay. All right. Looks like we're ready. So again, this is the first 10 pages of the story, the complete first scene of the novel, and we're gonna hear it. Let's get into it. Let me know if the audio's too low or too loud. I'll adjust that as we need to, as I need to. So here we go.
Smog lay heavy in the air like a weighted cloak on her shoulders, setting a thin film of soot and ash in the dark alleyway. Gray brick walls let off droplets of water splatter onto the cobblestone street from the misty mid-afternoon rains. Captain Madeline Oldbarrow clutched a sleek, vertical, double-barrel Beaumont cane revolver and flicked the cylinder open to reveal 9 black holes. She hastily fed 9 slender brass .22 caliber bullets into the cylinder, keeping her eyes bolted into the shadows of the alley. Then she proceeded slowly, making sure her black boots did not make excessive noise in the wake of her footfalls, taking comfort in the weight of the saber at her hip. The small black stone that did not roll bounced on her chest from a steel-linked necklace as she walked. She scanned the alley ahead, her ornately armored greaves clicking faintly in her movements.
Alright, just for the sake of this video, I'm going to turn the camera off because I'm blocking off some of the reading here. So, there you go.
A sharp scream broke the solitude ahead and made her catch her breath. She turned her head slightly to her hawk agents. Their hawk insignia stared back at her with open beaks. The silver emblem of the Order of the Hawk that was stitched onto their overcoats were a stark contrast to their overall black colors. Lieutenant Elisha Abnett, her second in command, stared at her beneath his bushy white eyebrows. His whitish yellow mustache blew back and forth as he drew breath, made uneasy by the task at hand. Madeline squinted her eyes to the end of the alleyway and raised her weapon. She scanned the wall of what once was a matchstick factory, and then to the other, which must have belonged to an orphanage at some point. Children's soiled clothes still hung from the windows from clotheslines attached to both sides above them, abandoned and fluttering lazily in the wind. Just then, a hollow sob carried itself to the approaching hawks. A shadow sat beside 2 garbage cans huddled into a torn, brown burlap blanket. His thin and crooked arm slipped through a hole in the blanket, and he held his hand up, trembling uncontrollably. His fingers were oddly bent, and the skin from his yellow fingernails had been peeled back. Madeline leveled her revolver at the man and resumed her approach with caution, 1 step at a time.
Okay. I won't interrupt too much, but I am still here. Just because the camera's off, I am still here. That screen made me jump in my seat. Yeah. It's kind of the idea. I tried to focus a little bit on the ambience and the sound. But one thing I did want to mention here, this is kind of, if you're trying to find a setting for this, it's like Victorian England in the 1800s, so late 1800s. So between 1870 and 1880 is where, or 1890, that 20-year period is where this story takes place. So all the references, all of the clothing that they wear, the weapons that they have, are all from that time period. So that's not necessarily the fictional part. The fictional part is what you're about to see. And I won't interrupt. I won't do this very often. Just giving a little bit of context to this scene.
Haven't you done enough? I beg you! I only wanted a place to sleep. Please don't send me back. His voice was cracked, and his twisted arms were covered in black boils. By order of the Hawk and Archduke Blackmore IV, I, Captain Madeline Oldbarrow, placed you under arrest for intruding upon an unblemished precinct, she commanded. Tell me where you broke in from. Oldbarrow? I know that name, but it doesn't belong to you. No, you're the Red Crow. The Red Crow has come to kill me. The man spit in surprise as he said the name and began to laugh from beneath the flea-ridden blanket. His cackles broke the sullen stillness of the street. The arms slipped back into the blanket, and before Madeline realized, the man rushed from between two garbage cans out into the open. Only he wasn't a man. A naked woman with tangled marble white hair and boils covering her pale white body leapt onto the walls. Madeline's jaw dropped as the woman scaled the blackened brick with incredible ease, as if she were a spider. A gunshot blast rang in her ears as a bullet whizzed overhead. The bullet hit the woman's leg, and she screamed, but she did not slow down. Cease your fire! We don't want her putrid blood on the streets! She shouted, whipping around to identify the agent who fired the round. Idiot, said Elisha, turning around and slapping the cadet in the back of the head, knocking his kepi cap to the ground. Madeline turned back to see the rot as she disappeared over the top of the building. Mark this spot for cleansing, cadet, and stay here. Lieutenant, take McLeary, Randall, and Lawlin to the Empire quarters. I want the quadrant gate sealed off. Shoot anything that tries to cross. Walnut, you're with me. We will not lose one more street to this plague. Aye, Captain, said Elisha with a short nod, and the cadets carried out her orders at a brisk pace. A slight drizzle began to fall over the mud streets and brick buildings like crystalline sleet. Madeline wiped sour moisture from her face with her sleeve and quickly walked along the length of Banham Street. The city street was barren, save for a man prodding his horse with a cart full of steel garbage cans. She sniffed the air and then drew her revolver, pointing her weapon to a building taller than all the others on Banham Street. It was painted with black tar, and the windows were boarded up with crooked, rusty nails poking from the ends of the boards. The words Medicine Board of Empire stood out in large white paint above the door. She's in there, whispered Madeline. How do you know that? Walnut said, his thick Colville accent dripping over his mouth. She's shot. If she were to continue running, she would leave a trail for us to follow. No, she's hiding, Madeline said, licking her lips and pulling the hammer back on her revolver. Break it down. Walnut took one look at the door and charged through it, bursting into splinters. The door was old and the wood rotten, easily giving way to the large man. She stepped through with revolver raised. Stick close to me, Walnut. If she rushes... No need to worry on that count, Chevalier. He brushed splinters off his black overcoat and unsheathed his saber. Just a little note there. So, I'm beginning to think that I'm going to have some questions when it comes to the previous... is there a way to turn back? When he says Chevalier, that is French for, like, captain. Sheathed his saber right here. Actually, let me look that up just to double check, because when I wrote that piece, it's like a female version of captain, from what I understand. Yeah, it's English translation. It's like signet ring. That's what it actually means. So kind of like it's a word that I picked for this character. So whenever in this regime, the Order of the Hawk, like we've mentioned, they'll say to Madeline Chevalier, which is their sign of authority, like that she's an authority over them because she's a captain. Another word for captain for them is also signet ring. So when you see a signet ring, it's like, oh, it's a symbol of authority. It's a symbol to be respected. That's how they view Madeline in this case. So they call her Chevalier, meaning signet ring, because she acts on behalf of the king as well. So if you have questions about what Chevalier is, there you go. It means signet ring, and this is their sign of respect to her.
Okay, let's continue.
Satisfied, Madeline proceeded into the abandoned medical facility that once housed the city's most respected physicians and medical experts. A few picture frames hung crookedly on the rotting walls as wallpaper was peeled by torn strands. The eyes of the men in tight white lab coats depicted within the frame stared darkly at her. Dust hung like a thin sheet in the rays of sun poking through the window. Medical papers were strewn across the floorboards, crusted like dried leaves. She trained her revolver on the staircase leading up. There must have been a leak in the ceiling, for the sound of a constant drip of trickling water echoed above. The wooden steps were damp from the afternoon's drizzle. Nothing else moved or gave off sound in the building. A flash of doubt shot through her mind. Did I choose the wrong building? Madeline chewed her lip and began to walk up the stairs. Suddenly, a pale face with a white tangle of hair peeked over the top of the staircase and then withdrew rapidly back into the shadows. "Halt!" Madeline shouted with as much surprise as relief in her voice. She bolted up the stairs, careful to jump over a broken step. Walnut did not see it. She turned to a loud crash of wood breaking behind her. Walnut lay at the foot of the staircase staring at her in horror. Bone pierced his left pant leg. His saber lay on the wooden floor beside him. He was lucky he didn't stab himself with it. "Go!" he said through clenched teeth. "Eradicate that rot!" She steeled her jaw and ran up to the second floor and saw the white ass of a rot. The bare-festered woman jumped over a hospital bed and ran up to the next flight of steps. "I said halt!" She pointed above the rot and squeezed the trigger, firing 2 rounds at once. The woman ignored the warning shots and raced up to the 3rd floor. Madeline cursed, jumped over the hospital bed, and rounded the staircase to the next floor. Madeline nearly tripped at the roar of a shotgun above her, and she steadied herself by the staircase railing. Someone else was in the building. She held her breath and whipped her revolver into an empty wide room and saw a man standing over the rot with smoking shotgun, reloading his weapon. "Don't move, by order of the Hawk!" shouted Madeline, clenching her teeth. Startled, the man turned and fired his shotgun at her. The blast threw her against the staircase rail as buckshot pierced her shoulder. The man, in a combination of horror and shock, let the shotgun fall from his hands and held his arms up in utter panic. "Oh no, please forgive me. You startled me, Captain. Please, don't shoot me. I have a family," pleaded the man with tears in his eyes, holding his hands up even higher as he knelt on the ground. He wore a white, sweat-soaked shirt with torn pants and brown overalls. His black, unkempt mustache thinly bristled over his mouth, but it was the only bit of hair found on the man's head. Madeline pushed herself from the staircase railing with the revolver pointed at the man as she glanced at her wound. Fortunately, the shotgun blast was ill-aimed, and the majority of the buckshot grazed her shoulder. Her upper arm throbbed, but the pain hadn't set in just yet. Blood dripped over her black glove, and she squeezed her shoulder. With revolver trained on him, she looked down to the rotted woman on the floor.
All right, the volume. I made it a little bit louder, so let me know if that works better. If you're wondering, the images that are in the background are from the Order 1886. This is not a fanfic on the Order 1886. I just used these images in order to bring inspiration to me, in order to learn, in order to write the ambiance perfectly. So in no way is this story related to the Order 1886 or Bloodborne, which are my 2 primary inspirations just for the aesthetic. So aesthetically, this book will seem very similar to the Order 1886, to H.P. Lovecraft's work, and Bloodborne, and the inspirations behind Bloodborne, which again is H.P. Lovecraft. So just keep in mind these images are taken from like Pinterest or just the internet, and all they're here for is just to provide reference. In no way are these characters related. Whoops, I think I tapped the mic. In no way are these characters related to the characters of the Order 1886 or Bloodborne. Abberwall is its own story and its original, unique story. So just to put that out there, just in case you're wondering, you're like, hey, I've seen these guys in a video game. Yes, this is based on this is inspired by a video game, but it is in no way based on it at all. So just putting that out there. All right, let's keep on going.
Her chest had been burst open, exposing lung tissue and a burnt red beating heart with sharp ribs poking through them. The shotgun blast nearly blew the plague-ridden woman in half. Her mouth was gaping wide and her eyes were trained on the ceiling. What caught Madeline's eye was not the blood, nor the gore, but a small, upside-down triangle that was tattooed on the woman's neck. The very tip of the triangle was missing, however, and instead, a line cut through the middle of it and out the triangle's opening. "By the stone, I thought that madwoman was going to attack my family," he whispered. "I did not mean to fire against you, Captain. Please, forgive me." "Get away from her. She's not just a madwoman, she's a rot," said Madeline through clenched teeth, holding her bloodied shoulder. The man stood up and took several steps back. Blood had splattered onto his shoes. His blood would have to be tested for contamination in the name of safety. A small whimper in the corner of the room made her eyes shift rapidly. A petite woman sat there with a child in her lap, a little boy. His brown eyes were wide and full of fear. He stared up at her, his lips blue and quivering. "What are you doing here?" asked Madeline, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "This suburb is standing beside the quarantine district of Archmouth, and as such is advised to remain abandoned," she panted, holding her shoulder and eyeing the child in the corner. "What are you and your family doing so close to it? It's unsafe." "Lord Whitten of Langdale seized my gun shop and said my family and I had to leave. We've nowhere to go. We had no choice. I thought, this being the medicine board, there might be something worth salvaging." Suddenly, a whisper blew over her neck as if someone were right beside her. She whipped her revolver to the sound, but there was no one behind her, yet a tingling feeling danced on her neck that wouldn't go away. Then, a soft growl emanated from the rot's corpse. Madeline slowly turned, and she aimed her weapon at the body as it began to convulse and twist. The rot's eyes darted to her, and a smile crawled onto her face. Madeline's mouth dropped open. The pain in her shoulders seemed to evaporate. "Stay still. Don't get back up," Madeline said, but her words came out as no more than a whisper. She pulled the hammer of her weapon back, but her hands suddenly felt like they had rust in her joints. The rot, with bloodied ribs poking from her body, rolled over, and she twisted her head abnormally. Like a marionette, and with stunning speed, the rot grabbed the shotgun on the floor and darted behind the man, putting the barrel of the weapon to his head. The man
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to pause it there. This is where the video that came out yesterday stopped. So this is where it will continue. So next week is going to be from this point on to the end. So I don't know if you understood what happened here, but this person just got blown in half, and now she's back up again and took the shotgun and is pointing it to this guy's head. Just as a little side note as well, this story has not been beta edited yet. This is from the final draft, the most recent draft, which is like its 6th iteration. So anyway, just to point that out there, and let's keep on going.
The man, just as shocked as Madeline was, raised his hands once more and began to whimper as the woman in the corner picked the child up in her arms and screamed. The rot pulled the man into a dim corner and held him there. Her eyes and sharpened teeth seemed to glow white in the shadow of the dark room. Madeline found her voice and the movement in her hands. She pointed a revolver at the rot. "Let him go," she said, her hands shaking. She didn't know if it was due to the wound in her shoulder or having witnessed the supernatural display, but she felt dizzy and struggled to maintain her concentration. "I want to live. Why can't you understand that?" cried the rot, trembling. "The plague is what does that, isn't it? Keeps you living when by all rights you should be dead," said Madeline, taking a step to the rot. "I've never seen that before." "Come no closer, Red Crow. I've heard the stories about you. You've hunted and killed more of us than any hawk in Abberwall. Our blood rests on your head, cursed though we be," spat the rot, trembling and laughing. "I said let him go," commanded Madeline. "That's not gonna happen. I will not risk you infecting this precinct." "And what will you risk, Doorbell? This innocent man's fucking head?" Madeline aimed at her, but the rot moved behind the man with a cruel laugh, holding the shotgun steady against his ear. "You see, Our fates are intertwined, Red Crow, said the rot, then pointing to the odd semi-triangular tattoo on her neck. I'll have nothing to do with you, she spatted back. So you say, but that's not true, is it? Who can say what the future holds? The cold night is on the rise. What will you say when darkness descends upon us all? Abberwall will not fall. Madeline took a step to the rod, attempting to get a good angle on her. I said stay away, she screamed. You will let me go or this man buys it. The man looked at Madeline, and his face turned to horror as he understood the look in her eyes. There was too much at stake. Please, don't, he pleaded. I'm sorry, whispered Madeline. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet pierced the man's chest and hit the rot behind him. The rot screamed and pulled the trigger of the shotgun, splattering the man's skull and brain matter to the wooden floorboards. Pieces of bone and drops of blood splattered onto the woman and her child. The man's body fell, lifeless and headless, in a heap of flesh. The woman in the corner screamed again, and the rot darted to her and the child, but this time, Madeline was ready. In one swift motion, she drew the saber at her hip, the sharp steel edge gleaming, and leapt across the room. The rot turned too late as Madeline swung her saber in 3 elaborate and precise whistling strokes, piercing her flesh and slicing through bone as if it were made of paper. The rot tumbled over and fell in pieces before reaching the woman and her child. Madeline then struck the rot's spinal cord with the tip of her saber and severed her neck. Her head rolled on the floor and stopped with her white eyes staring up at Madeline. They blinked once and then remained still with a cruel smile etched on the head's deadened face. The body twitched, but did not get up again. The woman screamed again and ran to her dead husband's body. The little boy remained sitting in the corner, staring at the rot without any emotion or concern. Madeline took a deep breath of relief and led her bloodied saber to her side. In that moment, Lieutenant Elisha and the rest of her men bounded up the steps. Order of the Hawk! Shouted Elisha. Stand down! I'm here, Madeline said. A look of shock covered his face as he saw the man's body and the dead rot sprawled on the floor. Holy shite, said Elisha. Then, looking at her shoulder, did the rot? It's only buckshot, said Madeline. The rot never touched me. Lieutenant, call up the Escalapian. This rot needs to be contained before it spreads the plague in Westforth Precinct, and Walnut needs to be seen as well. Right away, sir. You killed him! The woman shouted at Madeline. You horrid bitch! You killed him! The woman sobbed and cradled the man's chest, but she didn't know how to hold his headless body. Blood covered her once blue dress. Tears fell from the woman's cheek, and a fire burned in her eyes. You killed my poor Arthur! The same name as my husband. Madeline frowned and walked to the boy, who was still staring at the dead rot's cut body. You are safe now, little one. I want it known that Captain Madeline Joanna Oldbarrow has given you permission for asylum in the Hospitaller Quarter. You go there and tell him I gave you passage. Be sure to go to a letting before entering the quarter. You can go plow yourself, Red Crow, spat the woman, letting go of her husband's headless body. She stormed at Madeline with fist raised, but Elisha stepped in between them, holding the crazed widow back. I don't want your filthy handouts. Look what you've done. The plague didn't take my husband. You did! Damn you. And damn the Order of the Hawk. Everyone knows you killed more people than the plague ever did or ever will. How many more of our lives will you claim before you are satisfied? The cold night is upon us indeed, yet the real plague in Abberwall is you, paranoid bastards! Elisha slapped the woman's face hard, sending her to the ground. Stop! Do not hurt her, ordered Madeline. Captain? He asked. Get this woman and her child to a clinic. Make sure they are sent safely on their way to wherever they desire, whispered Madeline. What will you do with him? Asked the woman, pointing to her husband. He will be incinerated at Merkwell Bay as custom of disposing rots, responded Madeline, unable to look the woman in her eye. You whore, said the woman. She tried to say more, but Madeline couldn't tell between her sobs and unintelligible mumbling. Elisha turned the newly made widow around and pushed her towards the stairs. Suddenly, the fight in her died, and she allowed herself to be led away meekly, like a lamb. She's in shock. Make sure the Escalapian inspects her, said Madeline, clearing her throat. She looked back at the boy, He was staring up at her. Without saying a word, the little boy stood up and walked past them to follow his mother. "What shall I put in the report, sir?" asked Elijah, raising one eyebrow. "This was a necessary death. Had the rot been given the chance to get away, we might have lost this precinct," said Madeline, inspecting her wounded shoulder. "I, Captain Madeline Oldbarrow, made a choice that helped preserve Wesworth, and in turn, Abberwall. Send that statement to the papers and have it printed on the morrow." "It couldn't be helped, Chevalier. You did what was best," said Elisha. Madeline stared at the body of the rot lying in bloody pieces beside the dead man. "The rot called me Doorbell." "Doorbell?" Elisha glanced at the carnage. "What kind of name is that?" "Back then, the children of the academy used it as a nickname when they tried to get a rise out of me. It's another way of saying teacher. That or nincompoop." "How would the rot know that? Perhaps she was one of your students?" "She's the right age," whispered Madeline. The Asclepian had arrived. He was thin and wore a tar-black trench coat and had a beak-like silver gas mask, moving like a phantom into the room, barely making any noise. He began to clean up the blood on the floor with a bucket of strong cleanser and a hand brush. The cleansing chemicals emitted a nearly blinding odor that burned the nostrils. Madeline hushed her voice as she leaned in to her lieutenant. "I think you and I have a bigger job to complete, Mr. Abnett. For example, how did this rot enter our precinct? Do you know what could happen if the plague was found here?" asked Madeline. Elisha's bushy white eyebrows flew up. "We could lose Westforth." "Westforth, the last precinct," said Madeline. She closed her eyes and rubbed the tingling feeling on her neck. "Abberwell would be completely damned then. I will not let that happen." "Aye, sir," said Elisha, bowing his head. "I don't understand how she made it through, however. Our walls are reinforced and manned every hour on the hour. Our sewers are blocked completely. I don't see any wings on her, so I know she didn't fall from the sky. Do you think maybe she succumbed to the rot inside the precinct?" Madeline shook her head. "It was impossible to come from within, wasn't it?" "I want the rot's body stitched and brought to the morgue for further inspection," said Madeline. "Write the report. I have a letting appointment." "Oh?" asked Elisha. "That's right. Even the Red Crow must have blood drawn."
And that is the first scene of Abberwall. Whew, it gave me chills to listen to it. It's very interesting because I've been working on this for the better part of a week. You would not believe how many lines I had to reshoot. Because in a couple sections the volume spiked because I was too close to the microphone when I was saying some of the lines, like especially the screaming and the yelling, and when they're saying their lines and they're like angry, I spit into the mic a couple of times and just completely blocked out the audio. So anyway, this is the first section, the first scene. It's about 10 pages. And this is what I'm going to be using to send as for looking for an agent. It establishes character, it establishes motive, it establishes desire and values as well. For example, for the main character, Madeline, which she has a very grandiose idea of herself. She definitely has a hero complex. And she says her full name 3 times. No, I'm sorry. She says her full name twice, saying, "I, Captain Madeline Joanna Oldbarrow," or "I, Captain Madeline Oldbarrow, do this or give this authority." So she definitely has the authority there, and she's not afraid to let people show it. Yet that strength is also her weakness. This hero complex that she has is actually more of a weakness than it is a strength, and that's definitely one of the things I go in depth later on in the story as she uncovers the great mystery. Because Westforth, so Westforth is a precinct in Abberwall. So Abberwall is made up of 8 precincts. How many do I have? 8? 9? Crap, I forgot how many I have. I'm supposed to know these things. I'm the author. I have to know how many precincts there are in Abberwall. But Wesworth is the biggest, is the main one where everyone is located, and it's the last one. All the other precincts have succumbed to the plague, right? So this plague is, think about it kind of like a zombie plague. that's kind of what it is. That's an incredibly powerful start. I love it. Thank you. I really appreciate that you like it. This is kind of what I'm hoping will be a hook when people pick up the book and they're like, I don't know. I don't know about the cover art. Let's take a look at the first few pages. I hope this is what they see, and I hope that they have that same reaction that you did, that they like it. And by the way, thanks for the likes. I've received 2 likes. I don't know who's liking. I wish I could find a way to know who's liking, that way I can thank them personally. But if you've liked the stream, thank you so much for doing that. It really supports me. It really shows me that you guys like these kind of videos, so I'll continue to make videos like this. Well, not like this. I'm probably not going to narrate anymore. As you can tell, I'm not a voice actor. My calling is writing, not being a voice actor, as you can tell. But I tried my best. I feel like I gave a really good effort, especially adding some sound effects in there and trying to vary my voice when it came to different characters. I really enjoy voice acting, or I really enjoy watching or listening to other people voice act. So it was really fun to have a crack at it. But anyway, back to Abberwall. Okay, so I'm currently writing Falkirk. So Abberwall is the city to the north, right? So the whole story is going to be split up into three arcs, right? The first arc is Abberwall, which is in the north. The second is Falkirk, which is in the south. And the third one is Grimberg, which is to the east. So you've heard it first here. The plan for this series of books is that Abberwall is 1 book. Falkirk is going to be 2, split up in 2 parts. And then Grimberg is going to be a trilogy in itself. And that'll all take place in each corresponding city. Abberwall, the main focus of the story is going to be in Westfirth Precinct. And this is the precinct that Madeline is trying to protect, essentially. So if she's able to protect Wezerith and then start taking back other precincts, in her mind, Abberwall will be restored. That is the ultimate goal, is to restore Abberwall. Clearly, there are other forces of darkness at work here. We had a zombie-like creature that came back from the dead, or was supposed to be dead. I mean, a shotgun blast tore her in half, and yet she was still able to come back to life. So there is a dynamic with that character. If you think that character is completely dead, even with a shotgun blast tearing her in half and her having her head cut, you're in for, hopefully, a surprise. You did a great job. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Jellicle. Thanks for watching. This is the first just 10 pages, and I hope that the rest of the story is as intriguing and interesting as the first, as this section right here. You're doing great, son. Entertaining. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate you coming into the stream. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Because I can talk about this all day long. I just wanted to address if you have any questions over the writing process, over some of the imagery, over some symbolism that I have in the story. Please feel free to ask. I encourage questions. But I've been writing this story for about 4 years now. So I started writing this story shortly after I graduated from radiology school. I went and was living with a friend of mine, and this is where I had the inspiration to start writing the story. So I spent a long time in his living, because I lived in his house, right? I rented out a room, and I spent so many countless hours in his dining room with a cup of coffee and then my little MacBook that I would write on. And I wrote most of this story there. And in between all that, I wrote The Twin Princes, which I've written and published. The link is still in the description if you want to take a look at that. And I've been writing I Am Made of Chalk, which I'm going to talk very little about here. I'm not announcing that. That's a long way from being finished because it needs to be rewritten entirely. Unfortunately, I have to rewrite that entire book, but I still have a passion for it, so it will definitely come to light. It'll just be a long time. Abberwall, however, is a totally different story. Falkirk is on the way. I'm starting to do the foundational work for Falkirk. I'm writing the characters, some of the motives, design, character arcs, character morals, and a lot of twists, fun things like that. I'm reading John Truby's, actually have it on chapter 5 right now, but The Anatomy of a Story. If you're a writer and you enjoy the art of writing, definitely recommend you to get The Anatomy of a Story. It's an amazing read on how to build a story. And it's interesting because I've done a lot of the things that are mentioned here without really realizing what I was doing. So it's really refreshing to read and say, hey, I got this right. It's also kind of a bummer when you're like, well, I could have done this better or differently, but the book's already published and you really can't change big character arcs like that once it's already been published. Daddy said, good narration, it kept my attention. Good, that's the whole point. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Who did the cover art, and can you explain the symbolism without spoiling the story? Yes, of course. Okay, so Emilio C. Rodriguez did the cover art, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up. He also did the cover art for the Twin Princes, and can I not view my own book? Oh, view on Amazon. There it is. Okay. No, I don't want to pick a charity right now. Okay, so this is Emilio C. Rodriguez, and he did my artwork for the Knights Without Kings, which is the first book that I published. And then he also did. So this is one of my favorite cover arts. I love every single cover art he does for me. He's very talented. If you need a link, please just DM me, or I can just ask for it, and I will give it to you. He's very excellent to work with. He's not very expensive at all. This cover art only cost me about $400, so it was very, very cheap, and I feel like it's very quality as well. Let's go ahead and get that out, and let me pull up the Twin Princes real quick. Oh, whoops, no. And then this is the Twin Princes. So this is the cover art to the sequel of Knights Without Kings. Again, I just love what he does. He's very creative with the work that he does. And anyway, so he usually does character work like this. He rarely does symbols work, like abstract, I suppose, like what I asked him to do. So I was kind of nervous about asking him, and I was like, I don't know if you're kind of like, if you would do something like this for me. But he's like, well, let me just give me a couple weeks and I'll get back to you. And he did. Another big inspiration for this cover, and I'll get to the symbolism in just a minute. I want to talk about the inspiration behind, because I sent him what I wanted, and the thing I wanted it to look like the most was this. I'm going to open image, a new tab. Oh, that's too small. I wanted my book to look like this, because this is one of my favorite novels, and Dan Abnett's one of my favorite authors. Let me see if I can get in. Can I zoom in at all? Okay, there you go. This is one of my favorite novels, and I love the cover art here. So I hope you're able to see the similarities. Right? This is yeah. So I wanted to keep the imagery here, and I was like, listen, man, I don't know if this is possible, but I want to have a cover art that looks like this. This is one of my favorite cover arts. Recently, they've taken these off, and now they have a different cover art that they have with this series of books, which I'm not so much of a fan of. I really like this gothic artwork. So that's what I asked for in my book. Okay, so when it comes to the symbolism of the actual image itself, and let me see if I can just pull up a straight up image. Okay. So this is the image itself. Okay. So what I wanted to showcase in this cover art was the duality between light and evil, right? And the combinations that you can have. For the first part, it's going to be, you see there's a little demon on the upper right hand corner, and then there's your cursed, like a cursed variant of a gun on the right side, right? And then half of the serpent on this side. So everything on the right side is supposed to be evil. Everything on the left side is supposed to be good. You see there's an angel up at the top, there's a gun that looks like a normal gun, and then there's a human on this side. Oh, and then the horse head looking thing, which is a chimera. It's actually, okay, now I don't want to spoil it. Okay. It's actually a chimera. It's not just a zombie or anything like that. The real actual term for what this character is a chimera, and that's on the evil side. And then you have the woman that's on the good side. So this is Madeline. That's supposed to represent her face. And then the mask is dead in the middle, and that is actually the combination of the two. So the masked person, because it's the person behind the mask, well, I don't know how to explain it without she's like I don't know. She is the shepherd to Nephilim's offspring. And who is Nephilim, you might ask? That is the serpent. The serpent's name is Nephilim, and if you notice, the head, part of it anyway, is on the good side. So most of these serpents are attributed with bad. This serpent is actually a combination of the two. I'm using a lot of H.P. Lovecraft symbolism and metaphor when it comes to Nephilim. And actually, let me dissect a little bit, because I may not be able to do this in another video. Nephilim's name is... Okay, so Nephilim is like an old one. It's like one of H.P. Lovecraft's old one. It's a cosmic being. And it manifests itself in the form of a serpent. And a serpent with many eyes, a feathered serpent with many eyes. And Nephilim, the name Neph in medical, or the term Neph in medical terminology means kidney. So what I decided to do with Nephilim, because I also wanted to consider it a cosmic being, is Nephilim is the filter of the world. That is the concept behind Nephilim and his name. He is the filter. But it also begs the question. The body has 2 kidneys, and the kidneys are not the most important part of the body. So that begs the question, because this is like the big bad of the series, is Nephilim and Nephilim's offspring. So Nephilim's offspring are other serpents that have that are cosmic beings essentially, and they threaten humanity and life as a whole. So it begs the question that there are other bigger creatures out there in the cosmic universe that are much bigger and more threatening than Nephilim could ever be. Do we see them? Probably not. We probably won't ever get to those bigger cosmic beings, because part of horror is mystery. I feel like that's one lesson I've learned with Abberwall. The biggest part of horror is not knowing that something else that's bigger is there. The only clue that there are other creatures that are bigger than Nephilim is his name. Literally, that's the only clue you're gonna get that there are other things worse than he. And that adds to the horror, that adds to the mystery, is the fact that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it, which is fine. That's why I like building my stories, is if you're not paying attention to it, it's okay. But if you dig deeper, if you take a little bit of time to delve into the story, into the names, just to think a little bit, you might glean something else out of it and be able to create your own mystery, essentially. You're a kidney, yeah. Now I'm actually more like a liver, actually. I absorb all the bad stuff and then crap out all the rest. Liver-limb, I don't know. Hey, Jay and Fopple, how you doing, buddy? Anyway, so that's kind of I hope that answers your question about the cover art and the symbolism. Emilio Rodriguez is from Spain, and he does a lot of cover arts and requisitions for artwork for any purposes. And I came across him in Pinterest. I saw a picture on Pinterest, and I was like, I really like this. I would choose this as a cover art. So then I just went to the artist and was like, hey, can I work with you? Let's build a relationship together. And this relationship has lasted 4 or 5 years, and it's been great. I want to meet him one day. I would love to meet Emilio Rodriguez one day and then share a coffee with him, and be able to talk face to face. Maybe one day we'll be able to do a Skype call or a Facebook call. That'd be really nice. So maybe in the future, when I get picked up by an agent and say, hey, don't worry about a cover art, I got a guy, let me just get in touch with him, they'll be able to do this. And maybe the idea is that this cover art will be the one to go to publishing, and when my book is published, it will have this cover art. I doubt it. I spent about $400 on this. I don't think the publisher is going to go for it, but that's okay. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Hey, I appreciate you tuning into the stream. It really means a lot that there are people that are interested in this kind of thing and that like it. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Jellicle, for coming. Killing it, man. How about you? I'm doing great, man. Right now, I'm just building the foundations of Falkirk so that I could, more accurately increase the story, improve my writing habits to create a better narrative for the series. So the way Abberwall is going to be written, Abberwall is just 1 book, Falkirk is 2, and Grimberg is 3. So what that's going to mean is it's going to be a long series, but I'm building the foundational work, and it's going to be fantastic. So Is there anything else? I think that about wraps it up, boys and girls. The second video, which will have the second half, which you've already heard, will come out on Wednesday. I put them out in 2 pieces, so it's a little bit more easier to consume. You don't have to spend 20 minutes just sitting down at one place. So if you want to do that, the second video will be on my channel. And I think I'll have an artist spotlight next week. I'm going to change some things about the stream as well to make it look more like me, not so much like League, because I don't like that game. I'm done with that game. It's stupid. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty, but I don't think that's also very interesting to a lot of people. You can get that anywhere. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I think I'm going to shut off the stream here, and I will see you guys in the next artist spotlight, which will be next Thursday. Tuesday I will have a stream, but I don't know yet what we're going to talk about. I'll be able to plan it out, and I'll put a little note, like a update on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. That way you guys can know to find me at that time. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's a little bit of a shorter one. All I wanted to do was showcase Abberwall, talk about the inspirations and some of the things that I liked about it. If you want to know more, there is no release date yet. That's another thing I want to talk about. There is no release date yet. The release date will be decided by the publisher when I get a publisher, and that'll be published by, or that'll be decided by an agent. Once I, getting a publisher will be decided by an agent. I just need to start querying once my beta comes back, which will be in a month or two. I believe in June is when it's supposed to come back with edits and everything, and then I can go start querying for an agent. Honestly, I have half a mind about skipping the beta process altogether, but it is necessary. You do want other people to critique your work before you show it to an agent. When you show it to an agent, you want to show them your best work. And your best work takes time and effort. And I'm learning that it also takes patience. And I am not a very patient man. I'm very impatient. So, all right, everybody, you have a fantastic night. Get something to eat and be safe out there. A lot of crazy is going on. But I trust that I will see you guys on the next one. Have a good evening. Peace.
Is a persistent evolution.